Hi, I'm Livvie. I'm a sex and love addict. I had no idea that I was essentially addicted to this person. I was obsessed with him. It was everything else went away. I had no personality. I was part of him. You know, he was everything. And I know now that that's so unhealthy, so unhealthy. Before my 19th birthday, I just decided that I couldn't do it anymore, and I took an overdose. Sort of from there on, I only chased people who didn't want a relationship. I would meet someone, they'd be the person that were going to save me. I'd have sex with them before I even knew their name.
Yeah.
And then that would be incredibly intense. And then I'd get to the point where I think I'm developing feelings, but it's actually obsession. And then they would break up with me. I would generally initiate a conversation that's like make or break, right? So it is, even though it's them choosing to not see me anymore, it's me that's pushed them to that decision. I would have loved to have known that my behaviour was addiction-based. Maybe you can love someone. You can't show someone healthy love until you love yourself. You will love yourself one day. You will. And I just never believed that. I mean, I didn't. I just felt incredibly hard done by, and like there was something wrong with me. And when I found, when I found SLA, it was like, oh, that's what's wrong with me. And there is a solution.
Welcome to School of Rock Bottom with Oliver Mason. I'm an actor, a voiceover artist and a recovery coach who's been in recovery many years, and I know firsthand that rock bottom can be the greatest teacher and the springboard for a beautiful life. And as you know, I interview fellow creatives and all inspiring people that have hit rock bottom, survived and thrived. This is a podcast of hope and how to get out of the darkness into the light, and that's why I'm so excited today, because I've got the ludicrously lovely Livvie May in the studio. How are you, Livvie?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm so chuffed that you've come down to talk to us today.
Yeah, it's really good to be here. I know obviously you asked me a little while ago and I said yes, and then I was like, I don't know if I'm ready, but it feels like the right time now. Yeah, feel good.
I completely salute you and your bravery and just all-round awesome human beingness for doing this, because it's going to help so many people. And for those of you that don't know Livvie, shame on you, but you will do now. So a very quick bio. I mean, this is a very quick bio you've given me here. I'll definitely add some more into the show notes, ladies and gentlemen. So Livvie May is an actress from Bristol and lives in East London with her cat, Carole. Lucky cat.
I am, yeah, and I've worn a t-shirt with a cat on it.
Amazing. That's great.
A little bit intense.
Big up the cats. Livvie, I've asked you on because you're a brilliant creative, brilliant actress, but also you've survived some rock bottoms in your life. And I know that your story will help others. So we're going to start, as you know, with your rock bottom, and then we're going to get into the joy and the recovery and the light from there.
Yeah, okay. So, hi, I'm Livvie. I'm a sex and love addict. So my rock bottom, I guess, I mean, I would say that I've probably been through a few, to be honest. But the biggest one that was, I was 19, so it was 12 years ago. And I had been struggling with my mental health for quite a while. I was depressed. I was going through counselling and stuff, sort of through sick form. Got to university. I was like, my mum said to me, you can't go if you're not okay. And I was like, I'm okay. I want to go. I really want to go. And I went and obviously there was a lot of drinking involved. I think a lot of people get to uni and it's like, right, now's the time to drink. I'd done a lot of it within school anyway, so I wasn't really that bothered, but I kind of felt a lot of peer pressure to drink, I think. And then I fell in love with someone that I lived with, and that was it. It was everything was about him. I was obsessed with him, basically, and I remember at one point saying to him, "I love you too much," and he was like, "What are you talking about? There's no such thing as too much." but I did. In retrospect, I did. I was obsessed with him. Everything else went away. I didn't have, other than people that I lived with, I didn't have any friends at university. I did really badly in all of my, on all of my projects. And yeah, we would drink a lot and I would fight with him pretty much every night. And I would cry and run away and he would chase me. And it was just that pattern over and over and over again. And I got to the point where I had failed my first year at university. I was like, do I want a degree? No. I'm a real advocate for, if you aren't in the right place and you're not in the right place, just drop out. I know it's, there's such a lot of pressure on not quitting, I think. And actually, but if it's not the right thing for you, then don't carry on. Because at the time, it was $3,000 a year. It's 10 grand a year now.
Oh my God.
I know,
That's crazy.
30 grand. If you get to your third year and you've just been depressed for 3 years and you spent 30 grand, what's the point?
What were you studying then?
I was studying performance and media in Cardiff. And yeah, I didn't love the course, to be honest. I specifically went there because I didn't want to do just drama. I didn't want to do just media. So I think there was 3 unis in the country at the time that were doing sort of a combination of both in one degree. So yeah, I was really excited for it, and I was very much and I loved sixth form, even though I was really struggling with my mental health. I loved doing my A-levels. I failed my first year, failed all of them, and instead of retaking, I decided to retake them all whilst doing my A2s. And I didn't get brilliant grades, but I absolutely did myself proud with my A-levels, I think, considering everything that I was going through. And and then so I was just so keen to just keep learning and to keep performing. And we didn't do a lot of performing, to be honest. We did 3-hour practical a week.
Wow. That is not enough.
$3,000 a year. No. Yeah. So I think I was in the wrong place, and I don't think higher education was for me, and I still don't have a degree, and it hasn't hindered me at all. But yeah, so I decided that I was in the wrong place, and that I decided I was going to drop out. And I had this attitude towards my relationship of very much running away. I was I didn't feel good enough, and I never said that to him. And I think I remember after the relationship saying that to him, and he was like, "Why didn't you say that to me when we were together?" I just never felt good enough for him. So I would push him away and be like, you need to get out of my life because you're gonna hurt me, basically, because I'm not good enough for you. And I did that over and over and over again, but with a lot of screaming and shouting and throwing things, and to the point where my flatmates were really affected by it as well, and they very much took his side, which but I remember there was a lot of because it was always me that started the argument, because I always felt like I wasn't good enough, because I was always trying to run away. And and then I got to the point where I'd broken up with him. I decided to leave university. I had come back to my mum's house, and his birthday's the day after mine, and I just felt this immense amount of pressure, because all of our friends, because I didn't have any other friends, it was just our friends. Me and him were one unit, we were one person, and we were so enmeshed, and it was really toxic. But he wasn't toxic at all. In retrospect, he was actually a very healthy, emotionally available person, probably the only emotionally available person I've ever actually been with. I wasn't. So we got to this point where I decided to drop out. I think it was about a week before my birthday, and I was just so aware of the fact that I'd broken up with him. I'd dropped out of university. I'd removed myself from this situation, and he would then be out celebrating with our friends, and I felt like a ghost.
Right.
And then, so then I think 2 days before my 19th birthday, I just decided that I couldn't do it anymore, and I took an overdose. And I woke up the next day, and I was obviously alive. And I texted my mum. I was like, I did something last night, and I'm really upset that I'm still here. And she took me to hospital, and then I was in there, and they looked after me, and then I woke up on my 19th birthday in hospital. And I don't, it's all a bit of a blur, to be honest. But it was, I had no idea that I was essentially addicted to this person. And I did manage to really, and I decided I was back in with my mum then, and university was done. I was done, and I did end up having a really good time being back at my mum's house for I think I was there for 2 years before I moved to Bristol. She was just outside Bristol. And then I had, I think, sorry.
I mean, I just can't express how grateful I am, for how brave you've been. I can sense the emotion still there, which it would be from that situation, and just your brutal honesty and making yourself vulnerable for the listeners and viewers. I highly appreciate, and thank you for that, because it really gets us to understand sort of your journey in a lot more detail and on an emotional level. I wondered if I could just dig into a little detail, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Was this relationship that we've been talking about now, was that sort of like your first serious relationship, or had you?
Right. I had relationships when I was a teenager, sort of in school and stuff, but it was always, this is really awful. It's not. I've made amends to myself about it. It's okay. But I was always with someone in place of someone that I actually wanted to be with.
Right.
When I was a teenager, I remember there was a boy in my school that I was really interested in. I really, really got on really well with him, and he was with someone else. So I would date other people, and so I was never enmeshed in these people because I was always one foot out the door, basically, and it always kind of lasted a couple of months. So I was never with the person that I wanted to be with. So when I went to university and I met who is my qualifier, I was like, what? He wants me? And I was so scared. I was living in fear. We were only together for 6 months, but I was living in fear for that whole time.
Sorry to interrupt. Just picked up on a phrase used, qualifier. What does that mean?
So it's the way I describe it is it's the person who, or the relationship that kind of qualifies you as a sex and love addict. So for me, having sort of defined my bottom lines now, so my behaviours that I have to avoid, or I can't, I have to avoid to maintain sobriety. Contacting him is absolutely paramount, and it always will be. Even now, 12 years later. Yeah. I mean, some people have a few sort of relationships that qualify them for SLA membership, but he's definitely the biggest, and it's gone on since it's never really ended, even though our relationship ended in 2012.
Right.
Yeah. It's still been there in my life and in my mind and in my, I guess, fantasy for a long, long time after that.
what we'll do, if it's okay, we'll just kind of put that to one side for a minute and just go back to go forward, if that makes sense.
Of course, yeah.
Just curious, when you're describing yourself as a teenager, sounds like they're potentially red flags in the sense that you'd like someone and then you date someone else to kind of avoid the pain of them being with someone else. I guess maybe that could be seen as a red flag. I just wondered what your emotional life was around it, because obviously sort of what you're describing at 18, 19, I could really feel it when you were describing it, that pain you were in. Were you sort of experiencing emotional turmoil in your teenage years whilst doing that other behaviour, although not as extreme before that?
Yeah, right. Definitely. I've always had a rocky relationship with my father, which I think, like, I understand that it's almost a cliche, isn't it? You know,
probably for good reason though, because it means something. You know. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, girl with absent father then struggles to communicate and be in a healthy relationship, but it's, you know, it's good that I know that now. But yeah, so we've always had a pretty tumultuous relationship, and he just never listened to me. He was absent in the fact that even when my parents were together, he just wasn't in the house. Like, I hardly ever saw him. He was always doing his own thing, and I actually don't resent him at all anymore. But he's almost like he's like a grown-up child, and I almost feel like he's the sort of person who maybe shouldn't have ever had children,
right?
Because he was pretty codependent as well.
With you.
With his mother.
With his mother.
And she's now passed, he's now, I mean, this isn't about him, but yeah, he's now very codependent with his current partner. That's not for me to talk about that. But my relationship with him, when I was a teenager, he never listened to me. I remember, this is so awful. It sounds so horrible. When I was a kid, the only time he would spend time with me was if I would go and play snooker with him.
Right.
How many 9-year-old girls play snooker? I did. To be fair, I did like really, really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I really had to like mold myself into his life. I remember there was this boy in the village that I lived in, and he would hang out with him instead of me. This was before my brother was born, so I was an only child at that time, and yeah, you'd hang out with him instead, and I'd be like, well, he's not your son.
Yeah.
You have an actual child here.
Yeah, that must have really hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. But it took me like years to remember that even happened. And then he did that again, you know, when I was so this was when I was, I don't know, 6 or something. And then I was a little bit older. My brother was born by this point. So there's a big age gap there. So it's 8 years. So I got to about 10. Yeah, oh God. Oh, I just remembered as well. This is like bringing up stuff. I got to a point when I was about 10. And there was this boy who was 14, and my dad would go and play snooker with him instead. It was like, I don't know, it was really bizarre. And I don't get me wrong, I don't think there was anything like untoward going on.
Yeah.
It was just, he was such a man child that he would connect better with young guys than, I don't know.
And is this where this belief that you're not good enough sort of came from, do you think? Or is that too easy for me to conclude?
I honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I've maybe not explored that.
Yeah.
That much. And I've always had a really good relationship with my mum. Still do. She's my best friend.
Yeah.
And me and my brother have got a really different relationship with her as well. She's like my best friend, and she's very maternal with my brother, obviously maternal to an extent with me as well. So like, yeah, I kind of always felt good enough, you know, or I did always feel good enough for her. And then my dad, and I remember my grandma, before she passed away, she would just be like, but what did he do? And I was like, it's not really what he did so much as what he didn't do. Yeah. And just, yeah. So yeah, I decided, and he just never listened to me. So I decided when I was 16, I'd had enough, and he hasn't been in my life since. And like I say, I don't resent him. I think he's got his own issues going on, and I totally understand that.
Yeah.
And I get from like an outside perspective, it seems as though maybe he must have done one thing that's like really horrendous that I wouldn't want him in my life, but like my life's just peaceful without him in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't regret that decision at all. And I do feel bad. He's got a relationship with my brother as well, so it's not to an extent, and it's not like he hasn't got anyone. And I guess, yeah, I was just the first person to go from his life.
I totally support that. I mean, I think even parents, if you have to put boundaries in for your own mental health reasons, then that's what you got to do sometimes. And it sounds like you've made the right decision for you, and I salute you for that. Obviously, I don't want to kind of psychoanalyze too much the relationship, the qualifying relationship. I feel like you've kind of, been really generous there. So I don't want to probe you too much on that. But I know when we spoke off air, you said it was 10 years until you kind of made the conclusion that actually this is love addiction. And you said it actually in your rock bottom when you were describing it. Talk us through relatively briefly, sort of the next decade then. It sounds like there was a lot sort of more painful experiences for you.
Yeah.
Obviously go into any detail you feel relevant and, miss out things that you're not comfortable to talk about, but just kind of give us an overview if that's all right, maybe.
The next 10 years. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm absolutely fine with that. So then I had... Yeah, and then I lived with my mum for, I think, 2 years then after I left university, and I was okay. I think I was still drinking, not as heavily as when I was at university. And then I met someone else. I had a brief relationship in between, and actually having spoken to him quite recently for the first time since nearly 10 years ago when I was 20, I was seeing this guy, and actually it's really nice to come back and talk to him and realise that actually he was very emotionally available and a really lovely guy. So it's really, I really enjoyed talking to him when I kind of did my amends to him, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But then I met someone else who was not emotionally available.
Right.
I will talk about him. I think out of respect, I know he was a very private person, and I don't think he would want me to, talk in too much depth about it, or about him. So I won't, but he wasn't emotionally available. He would push me away very, very similarly as I did with my first partner. I'll just call him Jay, just for clarification. So this current partner at the time, so when I was 21, I'll call him A. He would push me away. He would break up with me every 6 weeks or so. He would then go off, date someone else. When that wouldn't work out, he'd come back to me. And I let it happen, and it's the longest relationship I've been in. It lasted, it was very broken, but all in all, it was about a year and a half. He again had his own issues, and I was the constant in that one, which was very strange for me because it was the complete opposite of my relationship with Jay. So and I was always ready for him. I was always there to take the attention and take the affection when he was ready to give it to me. And then he'd leave, and I'd be distraught and I would cry. I don't think it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same in that it made me suicidal. Like when I broke up with Jay. But I think that in the back of my mind, I knew he'd come back.
Right.
So then, and then we broke up finally, and I decided that something changed, something clicked in my head, and I was like, no, I want to put me first. I want to hang out with my friends. I'm fed up of giving him control over me. And it literally, I don't know what it was. I feel like it was after however many times that it happened. And I was like, no, I don't want you back. And I was so happy. so happy. I was 22 and there's so many songs about being 22 and like about, I don't know, like freedom within it. That Lily Allen song, what's it called? It's not 22. It's a different one.
I think I know which one it is actually. I'm going to have to go and Google it now and find out because I want to know.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's like it's on the same album. And it's about like, just breaking away from someone who has control over her and just feeling like an adult for the first time. And, oh my God, I felt like that so much. I was like, great.
Yeah. I
felt so good. And then I sort of continued, and I was really good for about a year, I think. I was dating people, but there was no pressure. I didn't feel clingy. I didn't feel like any need. I didn't feel obsessed. I didn't, if they left me, it was okay. Like I didn't, I was.
When you say when they left me, do you mean literally breaking up or do you mean going away physically?
Well, both. I meant breaking up with.
Yeah.
And actually, I did the breaking up. And it was all fine, There wasn't there was no like emotional turmoil there. And it was good. And then I met someone else who got someone else pregnant,
right?
Which was horrible.
Oh,
and then see,
I can sense the kind of the sort of turmoil a little bit when you say, and then I got into another relationship, and I can really feel the weight of that. And how that has framed your journey over this decade period. Because, often when you talk to people about relationships, they'll sort of say it sort of quite breezily, and then I met this person, then we went away and that didn't work out. But every time you say, and then I met, it's almost like, and then the next chat, maybe I'm reading into it more. I can really feel the weight of that. And then another relationship, like it's like this sort of mission to get through or survive. Even. Yeah,
I struggle with that one, right? So here's what happened with that one was that I was dating him about 10 weeks, right? And then I had a message off this girl saying that she was pregnant with his child. And I was like, okay. So I broke up with him and I was like, I'm fine. And then I made the mistake of going back to him.
Right.
And that is on me. That is when I realised that I am the problem, right? Yeah. There's something wrong with me that I'm chasing this unavailable person. And and that's when I realised I was like...
Let's talk about that actually, because I think that's really interesting about what you thought qualifies you as, you said at the beginning, to be a sex and love addict. What's your kind of evidence, if you like? So like with me being in recovery, I sort of look at my evidence around drinking. And I can look back and go, I've got some really clear evidence that I shouldn't pick up a drink and that I should be in recovery. I wonder what your evidence looks like. Obviously, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, with the relationship that you spoke about, 18, 19, I would guess that you might think about sort of codependency and obviously the obsession or the addiction that you called it to that person, the overwhelmingly painful emotional response to the breakup, those kind of things. I wonder if you could just sort of dive in a little bit into those and just break it down a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, within that relationship, it was very much like I had no personality. I was part of him, my life was him. And when we broke up, I had nothing, that was it. I was a poor student. I didn't have a job. I no longer had education. He was everything. And I know now that that's so unhealthy, so unhealthy. And it's that obsession and that my terrible behaviour and how much I actually hated him at the time, which I hate the fact that I did, because I have a lot of respect for him now. I will always have a fondness for him. But at the time I was just like, I resented him so much for having other friends, for like being successful, being really talented, for being hilarious, for being really handsome, like all of those things I loved about him, I also resented him for.
Right. Was it fear? Was it fear that those things could take him away from you? Is that where the anger came from, do you think? Right.
Yeah, 100%. I was not good enough for him, and I know he could I felt like he could do better. And, you know, I wasn't pretty enough or thin enough or funny enough.
Where did that evidence come from at that time?
I have no idea, honestly. I guess maybe because when I was in relationships throughout school and throughout my teenage years, I was always into someone who wanted someone else. So that was just what I was used to, and I was comfortable with that. Yeah. I was absolutely fine with the sort of the man that I wanted, or boy that I wanted to be with, being with someone else. I was comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So it was just terrifying for the person that I loved and wanted to be with to want to be with me. I didn't believe it. I did not believe it.
Also sounds like sort of toxic behaviour later on, kind of not being allowed, maybe that's the wrong phrase, but like going back to people that have done things inappropriate, or like you talked about the ex who got someone pregnant, for example, and then reaching out to them again. Would that be another marker for you?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. That was, I forgive myself for that. I don't resent myself for that.
Yeah.
But it was a silly thing to do. Yeah. I knew he wasn't, he didn't want to be with me as well. He told me that. He was like, I don't want a relationship. I'm not ready for a relationship. And then sort of from there on, I only chased people who didn't want a relationship. As well, after that, so after that ended, I wasn't even in a relationship. It was just a mess. After that ended, my second partner, A, passed away.
Sorry.
Yeah, he took his own life.
Oh, sorry.
And I didn't find out until, a few days before the funeral, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go. I'm really glad I did. My best friend went with me, and I'm so, so grateful to him for that. And it really, I don't know how I was struggling. Like, I was medicated for how badly I was struggling with that as well. And it kind of put a new perspective on things, because now if someone broke up with me, they might die. Like, there's like, it put a whole new level of like stakes on it, the stakes were even higher, because now this person that I'd loved had died. So that like abandonment fear was like almost cemented by that, I think.
Right.
So then from then on, anything that I got involved with lasted 3 weeks.
Gotcha.
Absolutely no more than 3 weeks. And it was almost bizarre. Like I could put money on it being 3 weeks.
Right. Why 3 weeks? What would it give you, those 3 weeks, just to kind of break it down in a kind of sort of base level?
Yeah, so it happened multiple times. I would meet someone, they'd be the person that were going to save me. I'd have sex with them before I even knew their name.
Yeah.
And then that would be incredibly intense. And then I'd get to the point where I think I'm developing feelings, but it's actually obsession. And then they would break up with me. And it just, every time it would be the same. And I know now not to do that. I know that being that enmeshed with someone so quickly.
That's really interesting. Sorry to stop you there, because I was convinced the end of that little jigsaw you were going to say, and I break up with them.
Mm-mm.
That's what I was then expecting, that you initiated the breakup. How can you predict that at the end with such certainty? I'm just fascinated, because it sounds like to you it's like, this is the way it's going to go.
Yeah. I think, do you know, I think one of them, it got to 3 weeks and I was like, right, now this is going to become a relationship. And in my head, it was going to become a relationship, That's my plan for this. They don't get a say. It's my plan. It's horrible. So yeah, then I would generally initiate a conversation that's like make or break, right? So it is, even though it's them choosing to not see me anymore, it's me that's pushed them to that decision.
Got it.
Right? So like, for instance...
And that's why you think your control is?
Yeah.
In this whole thing?
Yeah. I have control over making people abandon me, I guess. I don't anymore, but that's kind of where it was at. Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so insightful to be able to see that, right? I mean, when did the penny sort of drop for you? I mean, I know just now having a coffee, I think I'm right in thinking that you actually decided to stop drinking for a while. And then sort of the universe threw up, recovery from sex and love addiction sort of around the same time. I wonder if I could just ask you about that, how that came about.
Yeah, honestly, it was absolute divine timing. So I am 2 years sober.
Congratulations, that's incredible.
Very much. I literally the other day as well. So I think it's the 9th of May. I decided to stop drinking. I'd done some stupid stuff when I'd been drinking. Quite sex and love based. Drinking would lead me to do other things. For instance, acting out physically with men that I wasn't interested in. Not being able to say no to people was a big issue, and then that would have a huge effect on my mental health, and I would just the day after would just be horrendous. And although I said to you that I don't experience the phenomenon of craving when it comes to alcohol, I just knew that it was a catalyst for something bigger. Didn't know what that was at the time. I was just like, I've quit drinking before. When A passed away, I stopped drinking for 3 months, and I just knew that that's what I needed to do. Yeah, because I was just too sad. I was just too sad, and obviously alcohol's a depressant. So I knew I could do it, and for however long I needed to. And then a month later, I had an unintentional one-night stand. One of those things where I think, I'm actually going to end up dating this guy. And then I had sex with him and then never heard from him again. Right. And the day after, I was sat in a cafe with my friend, and he'd come, I can't remember, he'd come up to London to visit me because he lived in Cardiff. And he told me about SLA, and he was like, listening to me talking about this unintentional one-night stand. And he was like, yeah, I'm in, I'm a sex and love addict. And I was like, what is that? Tell me, because that sounds like it might be exactly what I am. And
you sounded quite excited to hear that question, didn't you?
Yeah, really, honestly, I know it's obviously, and I love that you always frame your rock bottom as the beginning of something better. Yeah. Right? I love that. I love looking at my rock bottom and going, I'm not there. Yeah. I have found a place where I can be who I am and know who I am, and I'm so much better.
Amen.
I love it. And that moment for me, when my friend told me about sex and love addiction, I was like, alarm bells, something went off in my head, and I was like, I'm in the right, this is it. Yeah. I got COVID then, a couple of days later. So I was home for a week, and so my friend obviously doesn't live in London, so he was going to online meetings. So I could go to the same meetings as him and from home because I coach. So I went every single day. Amazing. To these meetings. And I remember my very first one, and I told that story, obviously, that I told at the beginning. I was bawling my eyes out, bawling. And I was like, I'm in the right place.
It's incredible, isn't it, when you can get that identification?
Yeah.
Wow. And I'm so glad you did find that identification. We all need it, myself included. Obviously, my bottom line behaviour, I know this is a SLA term, bottom line behaviour, the sort of non-negotiables of your recovery, for me is obviously not to pick up a drink, right? Yeah. Like you say, you don't identify as someone who suffers with alcoholism, you don't have a drink and then worry about, drink taking over. But it sounds like alcohol then makes you powerless over acting out. What would your acting out behaviours look like? Because from what I understand in SLA, everyone's different. And I know it's a little bit personal. My job in personal all interview, let's be honest. Yeah. But what would your acting out bottom line behaviours look or be?
So I have got, hang on, let me get my...
Is the foundation not drinking to start with? Would that be the sort of bottom line, and then from then you work your way up? Or is it all in one pull together? For example, in SLA, do you have to, is it a requirement not to drink, or is that just suggested?
Right. It's not even suggested. It just so happened to be that I'd already stopped drinking before I came in, and
that's really good to know, because there'll be people listening or watching this think, oh god, I don't want to go to SLA because that means I'll have to give up booze as well. So that's not a requirement.
No, my sponsor drinks in moderation.
Sure.
And because it isn't triggering for her, it is for me. I can't do it. So so even though it's not written down on my bottom lines, I just know I can't do it, and I honestly don't think I will ever have a drink again, to be honest. Wow. So, right. So my bottom lines, I can't contact my qualifier. And I know I can't. And that was coming in the hardest thing, because even up to like 10 years after we split up, I would still, if I was depressed or I'd been rejected by a man or was feeling abandoned, my go-to was to contact my qualifier, to message him on Instagram or whatever, and he blocked me, you know, and that made me feel awful. It's like, why am I like this? Like, again, ghost. Why am I a ghost? So not even contacting him. I don't feel like that anymore. I feel great. I don't want to contact him. Yeah. So like sexual activity is on there. I'll be honest, that's the hardest one for me to abstain from. I've got this was a big one for me, and it's going to sound, I think, no listening to the Smiths.
Oh, okay.
So it's not actually a bottom line of mine anymore, in that it's more like no wallowing. Because I remember when I was a teenager, I'd literally get home from school, put the Smiths on and just sit in my room crying, which was horrendous. And I remember when I, you know, tried to take my life, the last thing I did whilst I was, you know, taking an overdose was listening to the Smiths.
Gotcha.
Okay. Who are obviously very depressing in their own right.
It's interesting you say this, because I always used to say, you know, if back in the day, if you come around mine for a house party, it would start off with like club music and house and jungle, and then it would end with me on my own in a dark room listening to Morrissey, which is obviously the singer of the Smiths.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the party, I'm like, yeah, let's go. 12 hours later, every day it's like Sunday. And I was like,
yeah, exactly. So like, obviously, and that was a big thing for me in the beginning, right? Because my, you know, a lot of people talk about fantasy. I don't have so much of a problem with fantasy as you'd imagine it, as much as negative fantasy. Yeah. Right. So like, I'm so catastrophizing and imagining things going wrong. I remember before I'd even kissed the boy, there was a boy at school that was like potentially going to kiss me. And before that had even happened, I remember having like fantasizing about him breaking up with me. I was like,
right. Okay.
That, you know, now I understand how insane that is. At the time, that was just normal for me. And I would, sit at home, listen to the Smiths.
What is that about? Do you know? Have you worked it out? Like why you would fantasize about the breakup?
I don't know. I mean, maybe because my parents, you know, I never had like that, never had an experience of like a positive, healthy relationship. My mum's always been so much better on her own. I've always been like, why on earth are you ever with my father? I don't get it. You know, you are,
right. It's
almost like, I don't know.
Okay.
So yeah, and I think it was like, and my mum's very happy on her own. And I am too now, you know. But there was a point where I was like, I'm going to be alone. And it really upset me. And now I'm like, I'm going to be alone, and I am fine with that.
Yeah.
What
are any other bottom line behaviours there that we need to cover? We might have covered them, but just thought I'd double check, only because time is unfortunately starting to battle against us.
Oh, so it is. Oh my
I know
God,
it flies in here, doesn't it? In School of Rock Bottom. You'd never know it.
Okay, two really big ones for me.
Yeah.
No arguing.
Right.
Taking that time to pause and reflect, calling a halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Yes.
I don't respond in that.
Is that no arguing, sort of generally speaking?
Yeah, anyone.
About? Okay.
And also no disregarding my needs.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. And especially like further on in recovery, that's, been so good. And like sense checking and being like, do I want to be at this party? Am I just here because I feel like I should be? Yeah. I'm going to leave. And it's lovely.
Yeah, my favourite word is no, and leaving as well. It's great, isn't it?
I love it.
What does sort of future relationship stuff look like for you? Like, you know, and obviously you don't need to share maybe, but I think listeners or viewers, you know, who are tuned in right now may be quite interested to know how you sort of see that going forward. It's
not really something that I'm concerning myself with at the moment, to be honest. It is very much one day at a time, and like abstaining from my bottom lines and making sure that, you know, I'm sort of, in touch with my higher power and doing, when I say God in inverted commas, you're doing God's will, right? I don't know what God looks like, but I have a connection with a higher power.
Yeah.
I've done step 9, which is making amends.
Right.
I've done it and I loved it. It was hard. It was really hard. But it's so freeing, and I feel like I'm a whole person again after, which is really nice.
Step 9 is incredible.
Yeah.
Slightly personal question.
Go on.
Were you able, it says when to do so would injure them or others. Would that then take your qualifier out of that amends?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did make amends to my qualifier, but not direct amends.
Got you.
So the fact that I'm sober from alcohol was a huge amends to him, because I like all of the abuse that I threw at him in our relationship was, because of alcohol and because of my insecurities.
Yeah.
So I wrote a letter, read it to myself, prayed, that kind of thing. And obviously also, my second, I made amends to A, who's passed away, which, that's really hard because it's very, how do you make amends to someone who's no longer with us? So again, I wrote a letter, I cried my eyes out with that one. And it was just like, yeah, I do have this, like, there's a place in my heart for him. There really is. And it's, but there's also peace there now, which is amazing. Yeah.
I know this one's quite tricky potentially. What do you wish you would have known back then from everything you've learned?
Yeah.
What do you wish you'd have known? Yeah, that you've learned along the way. I don't want to kind of make it a cliche question like what would you tell 17-year-old Livvie, but particularly maybe young women or men sort of watching this or listening to this, like, what advice have you got for them sort of going forward that maybe someone who's in a potentially destructive pattern?
For me, I would have loved to have known about sex and love addiction before, like at the time, because that was obviously 10 years before I found out about it. Don't get me wrong, I'm so grateful for the last 2 years being in recovery. So grateful. And I went down the path that I needed to go down, to get there. But I would have loved to have known that my behaviour was addiction based. I would say self-care is very, very important. Very important. You can't, and it's such a cliche, and I know like some people really hate this phrase, but you really can't love someone until you love yourself. You can't love someone properly. You can't show, maybe you can love someone, you can't show someone healthy love until you love yourself, I think is the way to phrase that. Definitely. And like, I think I would love to be able to go back and say, you will love yourself one day. You will. And I just never believed that. I remember when I was like 18, 19, I just always wanted to, like, even when I was feeling suicidal, it was like, I almost wanted to just go back to being a baby and start again, because I couldn't scrub out the things that I'd done and the behaviours that I had and the feelings that I had and the things that had happened to me. Couldn't scrub them out. So I just wanted to go back to the beginning, and which is impossible. You can grow from the things that have happened, and you can't erase the past,
Absolutely. Hard times are definitely character building.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think Jimmy Carr said recently, see a guy who's given a huge trust fund and see a tortured soul. He said that on Diary of a CEO the other day, talking about how hardship can give you strength. And I don't know whether I'd fully agree with that, but I think it sounds like me, in the sense that my sort of hardships, I don't regret them, and I'm grateful for them because they've shaped kind of who I am now. And if you can look at your sort of hard moments as in that way, I think it's such a positive thing, isn't it? Go, well, actually, it shaped me to bring me to where I am now and where I want to go, and all of that. It feels like love addiction and sex addiction is much more common than people realize, I would say. I mean, how many people will be listening and watching this that can identify with a lot of that behavior? How many people stay in toxic relationships, get obsessed, get codependent, put bad behavior under the carpet, keep going back? Do you think it's a lot more prevalent than maybe people realize? Because even you, when you heard those words, sex and love addiction, your eyes lit up. And I think a lot of people don't understand that a lot of this toxic behavior could be that. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I didn't. I just felt incredibly hard done by, and like there was something wrong with me. And when I found, when I found SLA, it was like, oh, that's what's wrong with me. And there is a solution, you know? There is a way of, there is a community out there of people that feel the same. I felt like I felt like an alien. I felt like a ghost to the people, to my partners, and I felt like an alien to everyone else,
Right.
I think it's absolutely prevalent. And I think it's, I think everyone's heard of AA, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has an idea of NA, but there's so many other things, until looking at, and I'd even heard of sex addiction. I was like, that's not it. Like, I thought about it actually a few years ago. I was like, maybe I'm a sex addict, and now I'm like, but I was like, that's not quite right, and especially, I've had numerous therapists since I was 16. I think I had my first therapist when I was 16, so nearly half my life. Not one had ever mentioned sex and love addiction. But I know a lot of people that that also identify as sex and love addiction. They've come to that realization because of a therapist.
Yeah.
So, I think.
And you having this big light bulb moment about sort of bottom line behaviours around putting myself first. There'll be a large section of people listening to this going, well, yeah, obviously you put yourself first. That's what I've always done. But there's going to be probably half the people listening to watch, they go, actually, I don't put myself first. I think a lot of these sort of toxic behaviours have almost in a way been normalised in society that, these things go on in relationships. People get obsessed. They have these big rows. They go back. Actually, no, it's not healthy. I really, really applaud you coming on and being so brutally honest and talking about this stuff, because it's going to help so many people. I'm so gutted we're out of time. I actually can't believe it. We haven't even talked about you and your amazing acting and you being a creative. Just briefly, I asked a lot of actors this. Was acting sort of a means to escape for you? Is it too easy to go down that road with it?
No, I think you're bang on, to be honest. Although I started acting when I was 4. My father was a singer. So I would get up on stage and sing with him when I was like teeny tiny. And then, and then I felt like really weird about that. And I was like, I don't know, like singing what couldn't be for me because I didn't want to associate myself with him. And then, I was in like Amjam stuff from when I was 4 and then just all the way through school, and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is all I've ever wanted to do. I felt like this was all I could do, and like definitely as I got older, finding like getting more thorough into things and feeling things in the moment and then being able to walk away from it. Right. I was like, why can't I do that in my life? Why can't I have that moment of crying and then go back to whatever I'm doing? Why has it always got to hang over me? So that I felt like actually was almost like a form of therapy for me. Yeah.
So interesting. I mean, I literally could be talking to you all day here. Maybe there'll be a part 2 in the future. Let's see if I can coax you on again. There's so many more things we could talk about, but I really feel we've covered such a wide base there. And particularly getting more women in this space to come on and talk is something that I think is so important. And I hugely thank you for doing that. I really, really do. Yeah. And I wish you well with your recovery.
Thank you very much.
And your career as well. And it's great to have you as a friend as well. So I'm hoping I'll get to catch up with you again soon and we can have a coffee and whatever else. Livvie, thanks again. And to all the listeners and viewers out there, please head to the show notes now. You can find out where you can follow Livvie, or you can find out more stuff in the show notes. There'll also be some links to further support as well that Livvie has highlighted. So we're going to put that in the show notes as well. I keep saying show notes and I'm completely obsessed. Show notes. Wherever you're listening or watching this, can you please leave a review or give 5 stars or subscribe, follow, rate? All these things massively help. All of this is coming out of my own funds and it just helps the algorithm, and it just means that more people can listen and watch it. Please share it with anyone that you think this might help. And as promised, and I've not let you down yet, I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Until then, look after yourself and thank you.